I'd like to start this episode by introducing our guest by reading his biography. Now based in the US, The Awakening is a dark musical project born in Johannesburg, South Africa in the late 90s as the creative expression of vocalist, multi-instrumentalist, author, actor, and songwriter ASHTON NYTE. The Awakening sound has morphed and mutated over the years, incorporating elements of gothic rock, dark wave, gothic metal, industrial rock, post-punk, electronic, folk noir, new wave, and other theatrical meanderings. Frontman ASHTON NYTE has released 8 solo albums and 2 books in addition to his work as The Awakening. He has contributed vocals and lyrics to several other projects, featuring members of The Cure, Peter Murphy, The Mission, Beauty and Chaos, and All About Eve, among others. NYTE has written and performed in theatrical productions and hosted philanthropic events, including his Rock Against Rape concert series and presenting a lecture series at U.S. universities focusing on tolerance and acceptance. He has had songs featured in major television shows like Pretty Little Liars, Original Sin, The Purge, among others. Music journalists have described NYTE as Johannesburg's Bowie for his widely varying musical styles and theatrical performance approach. With a catalog of over 300 released original songs, ASHTON NYTE and The Awakening have enjoyed airplay and chart success on major independent radio stations worldwide and have toured extensively and headlined music festivals in the USA, Europe, and South Africa to upwards of 30,000 people. In 2019, NYTE worked on the score of the movie Don't Let Go with composer Ethan Gold, which premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in January 2019. He completed a 36-date European tour with British indie artist Wayne Hussey, The Mission, in September-October of 2019. Waiting for a Voice, his 7th solo album and first book of poetry, short stories, and personal reflections, was released in July 2020. His second book and 8th solo album, Autumn's Children, was released in August 2023 and was named one of the top 17 albums of 2023 by American Songwriter. 2024 saw NYTE contribute his voice and lyrics to the latest Beauty and Chaos album and the movie Pale Horse, directed by late Perry Teo. The Awakening's self-titled 12th album was released on October 18th, 2024. The Awakening is set to tour extensively in 2025. Please welcome ASHTON NYTE.
We live in St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh, great.
You can tell from my accent that I'm from St. Louis. You know.
So,
originally from Johannesburg, South Africa.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And actually, since you just brought that up, that was one of my questions I wanted to ask you. What was it like growing up there?
Intense. Yeah. I think it's you live pretty hard there. You know, there's a lot of crime. There's a lot of problems with infrastructure and that sort of thing. And I think it's I'd like to say it's the adversity that makes us stronger and all of that. And I think the pursuit of art saved me from certain ideas and ideals that country is known for in its past. And but ultimately, I did experience a melting pot of influences and styles and people and languages and cultures, like few places on earth, you know. And it's really beautiful, and the wine's really good if you're into wine. But you know, so there's it's got a lot going for it, and by some small miracle, you know, I started a gothic rock band in Africa, and they liked it, you know. So South Africa was very good for me and good to me ultimately.
Yeah, outstanding. So when did you decide to make the move to the States?
It was made for me in that on my, I think, second US tour, I met my wife on tour. That's how it goes. Love at first sight. You know, we actually have the whole thing on camera because my manager was filming everything. So there's this moment she goes, "ASHTON, this is Rose." And we met, and I was already kind of planning our future, you know. So I hadn't intended to live in the US. It was just one of those things. So we met, fell in love. I came back after the tour, and battled to leave since.
So did you come straight to, you came straight to the States, or did you bounce around for a little bit? Or have you been in the same place ever since?
Oh, we've lived in St. Louis the entire time. You know, we travel a lot, and St. Louis is a good place to travel from. We have a nice compact airport, and it's really easy to get to. And
yeah,
it's a nice big small city. And it's been very kind to me. It was nice being completely anonymous after being mildly famous in my own country. I've actually just enjoyed being, you know, just some guy with a weird accent in town. You know, it's been good.
Do you go back? Do you go back often or no?
To South Africa? No, the last time I went back was actually when my dad passed just before COVID started. So it was a double whammy, you know. We went back to help Mom with everything, and then they were closing the borders and we had to get out really quickly, you know. So
yeah, I'm sure that was difficult, emotional for you.
Yeah, you know, I used it and I wrote an album called Waiting for a Voice. So I think absolutely, when you know, whether you're an artist or not, everything we are and everything is, you know, some kind of reflection of our experiences, and that's certainly had an impact. That album ended up being shaped by losing my dad and the pandemic, you know, and I wrote a book to go with it and the whole trip. So
that's incredible that I was checking out your website, like you're, you know, not only do you write music, but you write books. So that's fantastic. So what I've noticed about you, like, it seems like you're just absolutely overflowing with music and writing. And where do you think that comes from? Was your family, were they in the music industry, or were they creative, or where do you think that comes from?
Well, my dad was a music fanatic. He was not a musician, but he, you know, probably would have been in another universe, alternate reality. And I think he's one of those guys that wouldn't let you leave the party until you'd heard the song of this record, and, you know, and I think a lot of that rubbed off. And my first hero was Elvis Presley, you know, like many of us, I suppose, many of us that admit it. And that just, the spark was lit, you know. So between Dad's obsession and growing up in this place where art wasn't celebrated or even encouraged, in fact, it was kind of beaten out of you by the school system of the time.
Really?
Yeah. There was like I've said before, sometimes when you go with the flow, you end up in the gutter, you know. So I thought, let's try something else, and it wasn't easy. It was always kind of pushing against what the system wanted you to become. Everything from, back in the heyday, everything from being a screaming racist to being just intolerant. And I'm generalizing, of course, but the schools I was in, that was kind of where they were pushing you, generally speaking. And art saved me, you know. It's like I had a good family and good friends, but it was hearing people singing and speaking out about these things, and then everything else, just your sort of hotline to the rest of the creative world, through South African artists, and then of course the plethora of international artists. So it's just, art's very sacred to me, I think, because I can see how the absence of that would have resulted in a very different life for me, most likely.
Oh yeah, and absolutely.
Not a good life.
Okay, well, maybe we'll get into that later. But I'm curious what you just said, how sometimes when you go with the flow, you end up in the gutter. That's a great saying. I haven't heard that before. Did you write that?
Yeah.
I love that.
Thank you.
So from your experience, because I can tell you from mine, music, it's been very gracious to me in my life, and the creative process, and just working with other artists, it's been very good to me. But at times, you know, there's ups and downs. But what for you, what keeps you going in music? Because, you know, I'm sure you've hit walls. I'm sure you've had your doubts. I'm sure, like all of us, you know what I mean? And some people have a easier time than others, but I think most of us, we struggle, and there's resistance, and there are tests, and there are, okay, well, how much do you love this, you know, to push through? So what have you experienced so far in your career with that? Because like you said, sometimes, you know, the world will push you away from what you love, but you have to fight for it.
Right.
So what can you say to that?
I mean, I can say a lot about that. It's been a long career and a long life and a long, a long learning curve, and you're always learning. And I think, incidentally, that little line, I did a what would you call it? Not a lecture, but like a little talk to universities and things some years ago called "Tolerance is a Dirty Word." And I intentionally gave it that title because, to me, tolerance is the bare minimum. You got to. That should be the expected. There's a sense where I'm tolerating this person, like you're a martyr or a hero for tolerating something or putting up with something. So it was about disassembling all of that, and in that context, going with the flow, end up in the gutter for sure. You've got all these systems in place that are trying to shape us all the time. And I might get completely off point of your question, but I'm going to try and remember to tie it all together.
It's all good.
And that has been the ongoing journey. It's always a balancing act, and those are more extreme examples of political movements and all of that. But then you've just got your personal truths and what you value in everything. It's family and friends and spirituality, all these things that you're trying to balance ultimately. And I think with art, you're trying to understand your place in it all, your relationship to these things and with these things, and how it all shapes us and misshapes us, right? And I think that's why I never get tired of it, because it's always learning. It's always finding that balance. It's always trying to make the best thing you've made before, irrespective of who likes it or doesn't like it, or what it sounds like or doesn't or feels like, or how it reads or whatever. That I guess it's like some kind of quest for enlightenment or understanding, and I think you're never going to arrive, and that's the beauty of it, that it is the journey, and I think that kind of answered your question of why I don't get tired of it for that reason, and I absolutely love music. I love so many styles and shapes and forms and colors and flavors of music. It's just I can't stop writing. I have a problem.
I think most people that listen to your music can tell like you have a very eclectic taste, and you're inspired by a lot of different types of music and artists, like you said. So that's very evident and clear. I think, that was a great answer, by the way. But were there any periods in your life or your career where you thought, I don't know if I can get through this, or I don't know if can continue on? Because have things ever gotten so difficult for you where you maybe not decided to quit music, but decided like you weren't sure of your path forward, maybe?
Absolutely. I went into semi-retirement around about 2010. So I'd moved over to the US end of 2007, and I arrived with this, very much in love with my wife, and still am, and but with this idea of essentially replicating what I'd done in South Africa. And in South Africa, we'd played the biggest festivals and done all the things. So it was rather naive to think you could, replicate all of that, especially maybe in a few months or years or whatever it was. And there were a lot of teething problems, to say the least. And I had shifted from working predominantly with The Awakening to working more in a solo capacity. And I'd recorded an album called The Valley, which was sort of my take on Americana and sort of outlaw country and that kind of thing. Ironically, before I'd left South Africa, I wrote my most American record before moving here. And it was this sort of in-between place, and I didn't have sort of the right band to work with, and one thing led to another. Long story short, the tour did not go well at all. The release did not go well, and I think it was one of these things where this album had been this labor of love in the background for so many years that I'd attached all sorts of other meanings and significance to it. So when it fell so flat, it was pretty devastating. And I think I just lost my way for a little while, and I needed to just take a break. I needed to just go and sit in coffee shops and observe people and think about life. And I started meeting all of these retirees in the coffee shops, and I was like the baby of the group, and they'd invite me to their coffee get-togethers on a Tuesday at 10 a.m., which was probably quite late for them. And, I just loved just sitting there listening to people share their stories about their lives and what was important to them. And again, I was just the guy with the weird accent they don't know anything about, all all the things that I'd done or wanted to do. And I think that was really ultimately very healthy when I started actively putting albums out again. It was only barely a 2-year break, but that's a long time I used to put out like almost two albums a year kind of thing, one ASHTON and one Awakening, because of this problem I have. I can't stop writing music. And so that felt like an eternity for me to take essentially 2 years off and find myself and all of that. And in the interim, then I went and wrote an Afrikaans album, which is my second language. Again, living in America, writing in Africa, it makes no sense. But it was just all part of a process of I think, just getting my groove back. And then I put out some kind of satellite, which felt like I was kind of heading back to where I should be, even though I was blonde at the time, which is, all sorts of weird. I ended up working with Wayne Hussey through that. I went back to South Africa and supported him for some shows, and we became friends. And one thing led to another, and the Awakening supported the Mission on a tour of Europe, and then I supported Wayne. And since then, it's just all kind of worked its way back. So what a long answer for you asking, did I ever? I apologize.
No, I love it. Yeah, I love when the more elaborating, the better. But I mean, yeah, I think it's really important to, and I think most people that have long careers in music or just careers in general, creative careers, we go through seasons and chapters, but I think it's just as important to take a break as it is to like stay busy. I think it's like if you just go for too long, you just can burn out. So I think it's really important to take that break and recharge. It sounds like that's exactly what you did. And so I guess let's talk about the Awakening and then your solo stuff. Like, obviously the Awakening, you have like the more goth, the heavier, darker stuff. And then your solo project was, have a lot of acoustic tracks. But when you decided to have the separate projects, was it mainly for that reason? So you could just spread your wings and just dip into more genres, or what was the reason for that?
Yeah, it was that. It was just writing things that I knew were not going to fly in the Awakening circus.
Yeah.
It's my very first solo record was like Ziggy Stardust era glam rock meets new wave and new romantic stuff. It was a hodgepodge of those things. And I wore color, which, you just can't do in the Awakening. So, and that was already, so after 3 Awakening albums and also having a sense of having done all I could do in South Africa, I hadn't toured internationally, but we'd already we'd like headlined everything and done everything, which is really weird for a goth band, of course, to be on the radio and on TV and all that. But we were, and it gave me a lot of confidence to try other things. And since, that solo record came out in 2000, it's 25 years old now, which is, I was only 4 years old when I wrote that. So that, yeah, and since then I would often put out a solo record and an Awakening album and tour both of them, and it was this crazy life because it's just so much work, and you're touring 2 different bands and promoting, and I record it all myself and I mix it all myself and I do all of that. So yeah, I didn't sleep for probably 10 years easily. Yeah.
Wow. So the Awakening stuff you record and mix yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Dude, it's incredible.
Thank you.
Like I was telling you earlier, like I was refreshing my memory on the new record. I had listened to it before, but then I was listening to it again today. But dude, it sounds incredible. It's really the production's great. Your vocals sound great. Really deep tones, like your baritone vocals sound really good.
You mean these vocals?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. I love it, man. So great job on that.
Thank you.
And I think it takes a very unique musician to want to tackle all those tasks, because it's really difficult. Each of those tasks, like being a songwriter, being a musician, being a vocalist, being a performer, and then also an audio engineer and mixing, like that's each one of those things like can be so in depth. Like it takes years and years to get to a certain point of, of professionalism. So you're doing all these tasks, and I think it takes a very specific type of artist to want to do that. And a lot of people that do that, it at some point in the chain, like there's like a weak link, and it's like, but I think with you, you know, and I have other people that come to mind, but I think very few musicians can handle all those tasks and really like nail it, man. But like,
Thank you.
Yeah, great job.
Thank you.
Seriously. So for you, first of all, what makes a great song, and when do you know that the song is done? Because I know, like, for me, you know, we can take so long to write a song or to do a mix, and it's like, well, when is it done? Because we can just obsess over it and just, you know, work on it too long and then kind of make it worse from working on it too long. So for you, like, first of all, what is a great song to you? Like, how do you know when the song is done or when the song is ready?
That is a good question, and it's a seemingly simple question, but it's often I have to set myself little time limits for these things. I have to actually put good old-fashioned release dates and things in, and a lot of it's self-imposed because it's ultimately just me working for myself. But if I don't, then that very thing happens. You know, I'd still be mixing Mirror Midnight now, you know, because I'd want to get the some harmonic guitar to pop a little more or something. So yeah, I think there's the sense of, I think I work pretty quickly to get it done, in the sense of I try and take it to what I call my sort of 85% completion space. So if it's something where maybe I've got an iPhone demo or something and I decide, of these 20, this is the one I'm going to work on, then I'll sort of map it out or whatever, and then I'll just keep going. And that's usually a day, and I'll have everything written and whatever. And then comes the ASHTON, the producer, sneaks into the room and, you know, doesn't want to leave.
Yeah.
And so he and I have to have a little bit of a standoff from time to time. And my wife's also, you know, likes to point out that there's no sonic difference to that mix that she heard last week to the one with the really bright backing vocals. Now she can't, you know, and most people wouldn't know or care. Why should they? Because we are just being a little silly at that point. So yeah, to me, it's generally done when it feels good, and I just feel like everything is, the song is translating the way I want it to translate. That doesn't mean a pitch perfect everything delivery, but what it can just mean, it can be the opposite. It can be that slightly flawed delivery that's just got that, captures the essence of what you're saying, you know, or a solo, or I'm not really much of a guitarist, but I mean, if there's just certain ways you'll do things and you go like, I kind of like the imperfection there. And other times, no, you just keep doing it until it sounds absolutely clinically perfect. So really, every song lets you know along the way what it wants, what it doesn't want, most songs anyway. And when they're tired, and you should maybe just let them be and let them go and join the rest of the world, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you're like the goth Prince. Doing all the instruments,
that's
all the
fantastic.
mixing. Dude, do you like Prince?
Oh, I love Prince.
I love Prince.
I love Prince made high school bearable for me. You know, it's a short list of people. Prince was very, very close to the top. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I love that answer. I'm the same way too, because I kind of force myself to. It's like, okay, I need to just set a deadline for this to be done, and like just set the release date for distribution, and just do that, because I know the same thing, like I'll just take forever, and I'll never decide on a mix. I'll just keep going. So yeah, I think that's a smart way to do it, because we could just work on it forever and, you know, just make ourselves crazy.
A great workaround as well is what I often do is I write two different styles of album at the same time, and I think that helps. Like I will do a stripped down acoustic thing while I'm doing some overblown multi-layered, and the two kind of inform each other, and you know, this one could maybe be a little more developed, and this one could definitely be a lot less, and I think that often helps me to kind of stay sane about it. You know, it's like you don't want to just write Bohemian Rhapsody every time, you know, or arrange Bohemian Rhapsody every time. It's kind of nice to do it just vocal and guitar thing and go, okay, that works too, you know.
Yeah. So when you go to write a song, whether it's for solo stuff or for the Awakening, do you start with like acoustic and vocal, or how do you write, like maybe with piano or?
Yeah, it's mostly acoustic and vocal. That's my go-to, or just vocal. You know, it's got an iPhone full of, and so. But I think the most over the years, I mean, when people ask me this in the past, like I think when I really got into it all, like in the late 90s, doing my own production and everything, I'd often, you know, kind of build these skeletons of the drums and whatever, and kind of build it up the way you would in a jam session, I guess. But I was just jamming by myself.
Yeah.
In later years, for the bulk of my life, it's been almost the more traditional person and their guitar, and I just sing ASHTONese. You know, it's just vocal melodies, just. And I often find that when you're writing like that, there's a stream of consciousness that happens, and a lot of those words that are tied to whatever it is that you're playing, or the mood, or whatever it is you're trying to convey, end up actually informing the song. That might even become title tracks or lyrics or motifs or whatever. And it's kind of like, I feel like if you tap into it, it's there for you, and if you can just let it happen, it happens. And I'm just very fortunate that it keeps happening, you know.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because I've experienced that too. Like when you're just humming a melody, and then sometimes words just come to you that you wouldn't have maybe normally just written down if you were to write lyrics. That just kind of the universe sends you words through a melody as you're just writing it. You're like, oh, that's interesting. Where did that come from? And then maybe you end up using it or putting it in the lyric. But that I love when that happens. Yeah, it's incredible. Do you feel like do you feel that the universe does that for you? Like, in songwriting, like sends you, because sometimes like I'll hear melodies and chords, and I'll hear melodies, I'm like, where did that come from? You know, and I'm like, where is it coming from? You know, it's not coming from me.
Absolutely.
Right? So,
no, I do think that's just being in tune. I think that you know, it is a blessing. I mean, however you want to look at it, and whatever your religious or spiritual affiliations or ideas are, I think that there's more than us, right? And it's wonderful to feel, to be a conduit of sorts, and to celebrate that. And I think with that also influences who do you ultimately want to be, you know, positive or negative, or this blend, or whatever it is. And I feel like you get given these things to share these messages, or to shine light on things, or to offer hope where there's despair, or to talk about awful things happening, whatever it is. It's just, we are guided, you know. And because how could I possibly write all of this stuff? I mean, it's like I worked out, it's 20 records now. It's 12 with The Awakening, and I've got as many unreleased songs as I have released songs. I tend to write 3 albums for every album I put out.
Wow, okay.
And that's just, that is that Prince madness kicking in. I'm aware, I try to get sleep these days. And I'm not saying it's all good or that it's Prince quality at all, but there's definitely something going on if you can just keep coming up with this stuff. I mean, it's, you know.
Yeah, because I think some songwriters struggle a little bit more, but there's some like you, and sometimes I experience it as well, where it's just like, maybe it comes in seasons, but sometimes ideas are just flowing, and I'm like, wow, where is it coming from? Like so many, like, whether they're great or not so great ideas, when you just have a lot of them coming at you, it's like, wow, this is great. Like, first of all, where is this coming from? Like, why now? Yeah. But then there's some seasons where it's like maybe a little less, or I know some people have writer's block, but it's like, even when I maybe am not as inspired, I can still write stuff, but maybe those are the songs that don't make it on the record, or those are the songs that are like, that you just shelve. But yeah, so when you say like, okay, you'll write maybe 30 songs and only use 10 for an album.
Right.
So when you're going to decide on which songs make the album, is it just based off of feel and which ones you like the most, or is there a different factor there that you use to choose those songs?
I think because I'm still old-fashioned I like the album to be an album, and I like a sort of beginning, middle, and end. I think you just find that when you're writing, when you're super inspired about something and you've got your groove, you're going to inevitably write songs that are similar to other songs while you're at it.
Yeah.
So that makes the whittling down a lot easier when you go, okay, this is the same key and a similar tempo and it's saying a similar thing. I don't really want both of these guys on the same record, you know. So it's a lot of that, where it's like the classic B-side. When you hear it, you go, oh yeah, I can hear that's maybe not a variation, but it's very closely related to the song that ended up on the record. And then there are just things that just feel like they just have a different energy and want to exist in a different space. And they get, I hate the word shelved because it sounds like shelved forever, but they get, reserved for a different appearance,
Yeah, absolutely. Give us a couple, or maybe like what's a standout story or like a standout experience you've had on tour, like something that has just been wild, like the first thing that comes to your mind, like...
Well, the first thing that comes to mind with live performance is, I think it would have been around 2000, maybe 2001 with The Awakening, playing in Pretoria, South Africa, and I didn't realize that there was faulty wiring on the stage.
Oh, no.
So that's how I set the scene, right? So I was young and vibrant and filled with the spirit of Iggy Pop. So I was, crawling across the stage at one point, and there was a steel, like, rim around the stage. And so there's this guy, and he's got his hand on the thing, and he's trying to get me to shake his hand, and I'm crawling, and I put my hand on the thing and I take his hand, and then the circuit is complete. And we have this moment where we like look at each other and then go back. And I think to this day, he must be like, that ASHTON NYTE, man. It's that Lord of Darkness stuff is true, because I lost I didn't know where I was for a few seconds and then continued. It was a legitimate...
Did you like black out for a bit?
Just didn't know where I was for a little while, a few seconds, and then kind of carried on. That stands out. I also gave myself a black eye once with a guitar, doing a jump. You wouldn't think I'm a jumper, but I was doing this project which was called ASHTON NYTE and the Accused, which was our rock and roll project, and I was listening to way too much Velvet Underground at the time, and we were doing this festival, and we were doing a cover of 20th Century Boy, so we did the whole intro, and then as it's about to kick in, did this jump, and I thought someone actually hit me, like someone had hit me with a bat or something, and my eye just started like swelling shut, and I had long hair, and then I did this to get the hair out, and it was like blood all over the hand. I thought, this is not good, So it seems like all of my stage stories have violent sort of connotations. Must be my violent youth or something.
It's funny that you mentioned like being electrocuted on stage. Is like when I heard a similar story from Burton C. Bell from Fear Factory. Like he said almost the exact same thing happened to him on one of the shows. Like, but it was there was water on stage, and like he got shocked through the microphone or something. But yeah, I'm sure a lot of people have had that. Like just from touring so much and playing so many shows. I think at some point, if you're not careful, like that could happen. That's probably pretty common.
Yeah.
But yeah. So tell us about. Tell us about this tour you have coming up. You're starting out in Germany in July.
Yeah,
and
it's basically 3 mini tours. The reason for that is I have a cat that I'm obsessed with, and I can't leave home for very long.
I saw that you have it on your website. Your kitty.
Yeah, she discovered. Okay, I'll talk about her for a moment, and then I'll talk about the boring stuff like the tour. She found us. She was 5 weeks old, and my wife saw her outside in our garden. We live on an acre with a bunch of acres around, so we've got deer running around and, bunnies and all of that. And there she was, and we spent this. I'm going to try and condense this because it'll take up the whole interview. So anyway, we ended up using a squirrel trap as long as we could watch. We weren't going to likely to get stuck in it because there was no way to catch a feral cat that didn't want to be caught.
Yeah.
So we put the food in, and we were watching, and then thankfully she became part of the family, brought her in, but she had to be quarantined because obviously full of fleas and worms and things, and so of course Dad's studio was the obvious place. The one room with all the expensive stuff in it is where. So we just have such a bond because she was on kind of death's doorstep for 3 months, just lying on my lap every day, looking at me, and. How can you leave that at home and go on a tour for 6 months? It's just it's difficult. So now I do these mini tours. I'm just going to go for a little while and come back with Willow. And this baby touches my face, and I feel like all is good in the world.
Yeah, I love cats.
So yes, the first tour is a kind of getting the show back on the road. The Awakening has not toured in 9 years. I've just done solo work and collaborations and acoustic tours and all of that. But the last Awakening tour was 2016 with the Mission, and this will be a headline tour that we're doing, and so we're doing 3 shows in Germany, and then we're playing Castle Party in Poland. I'm sure you're familiar with Castle Party, and we're co-headlining that, so I'm very excited. And then we're back here in September for a new pop-up festival called Gloamfest, and that's going to have shows in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Portland, Vancouver.
Yeah, I saw that. What's the Lodge Room?
Lodge Room, yeah.
Yeah, I've never been there.
Me neither.
Interesting. I want to go to that though. I'd love to check that out.
Please do. I'm sure we'll put you on the list.
I'd love to come check that out. Hell yeah.
Yeah, so that's a new festival. It's a cool idea. They're bringing in various bands from, I guess, her vision is to bring bands that American audiences may not be familiar with, like from Germany and France and the UK. And us, because we're old and weird, so no one knows who we are.
Do you know who else is on that fest?
Yeah, it's bad. Let's think. It's Aeon Sable, Cemetery Girls, Dark Kisme. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I've just seen the word. The Royal Ritual, and Black Angel. I think that's all the bands that I think that should be 6, and of course The Awakening. And so that's September, and then in October, November, we're doing sort of the main tour, you could say, for the main European tour, where we hopefully will know all the songs by then, and we'll go back and do a whole bunch of shows in Germany, France, and the Netherlands, and the UK. Yeah, still got to announce the UK dates, still trying to finalize those, but everything else is confirmed and
Excellent.
ready to go. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm always curious too, like with musicians that tour a lot, have a lot of experience in touring. Like for you, what's the main difference when you're touring in America, like the States, versus Europe or UK? Like, what's like the main standout differences for you? Like at the venues?
It's a loaded question. We can tread carefully now. Well, America's all, no. It's. I was going to say, well, we played to a lot more people in Europe. No, there's a different relationship, I think, with every culture and every country, and then of course it varies from city to city. It's going to have a different way of enjoying or not enjoying what bands are doing. I think that generally speaking, I find German cities to just be really appreciative and very invested in the show and in the artist and in the art and the celebration of it. And I tend to enjoy playing those cities more than I maybe play some other cities, and the neighboring countries, you go Austria and Switzerland and France and the Netherlands, Belgium, all that whole area. I've just found that there's a different relationship with music. I've not always experienced that in the US, but I've admittedly not played a massive amount of shows in the US. It's not as The Awakening anyway. So again, generally speaking, if I'm doing a solo kind of more theater thing, then people kind of know what to expect, and they're there and they're kind of sit down and put their phones away and enjoy.
Does that bother you when people have their phones out a lot, or is it?
I think it bothers me that it upsets other audience members. I understand if you want to take a photo or piece of video. I do think that filming the entire show is probably missing the point of being there, and you're also the person next to you is now watching through your phone instead of, which I don't think is what they were hoping for. And that gets more into the whole digital thing, which, there are obviously pros and cons for all of this. It's great to reach everybody at the click of a button. I'm from the 90s when we had to actually just pray that your CD made it to wherever it was for someone to play it on their radio station or whatever. And we don't have those obstacles today, but what you do have is the complete flood of just content that you're dealing with. It's not just music, it's dancing hamsters and whatever else people are sharing.
Everything, it's literally.
Yeah. So it's this ongoing, trying to find the sweet spot. I like the tactile, so I still have a record collection and I like pressing up the vinyls and all that. But I know it's kind of a niche thing, I'm not going to expect it to suddenly take over the world, it's...
Yeah, so how do you feel about, I know you kind of touched on it just now, but social media and like the new music industry, like having to do, like Instagram reels and the TikTok thing and the streaming, like it just seems a bit, it just seems to be a bit much. Like I understand the benefits of it, how you can reach anyone in the world, and you could potentially have people listen to your music that would never know about you. There's a lot of pros to it, but there's also a lot of cons, and I still find myself today like struggling with it. I was born in '86, so when I was coming up, like computers are newer, but I remember the whole Napster thing, and then the digital downloads, and then iTunes was big for a while with the downloads, and now it's all about streaming.
Right.
And, you know, we see, like, I'm sure, you know, I don't know how much you check your, like, digital distribution. I check mine, like, every other day. I just want to see, like, how it's going with the royalties and whatnot. But it's, like, it's so bad. It's so depressing. It's like, dude, this is terrible. And then there's some musicians that, like, say, don't complain about it. Like, you know, you're getting what you deserve kind of thing. And there's some musicians that are like, no, this is terrible rate, you know? So like, how do you feel about the modern music industry in that regard?
Well, I mean, I remember the day when I woke up and iTunes had become Apple Music, you know, so the day before I was paying my rent from iTunes, and the day after it became Apple Music, and it was just free. And there was an adjustment, of course. I think we were all pretty devastated when you were basically just informed that, you know, if your stuff's out there on a DSP, then you know, it's free essentially. I mean, it's the royalties you're talking about. I think unless you're Beyonce, I don't think you're really reaping massive income from streaming. First, you asked about the social media and all the things we now have to juggle and become content creators and not just songwriters and artists and poets or whatever it is that we want to be. And I think that there is like a cognitive dissonance that kicks in when you have to be this 12-ring circus that you've got to keep going, you know, and something's going to slip through the cracks. I mean, it could just be your sanity, but I mean, it could also just be, I mean, just, I don't know, the obsession with you becoming a brand as opposed to an artist. And again, I understand all of it, I understand marketing and all the rest of it. I do think it's a lot to ask. You were talking earlier on about just doing what I do with writing and recording and doing the various things. That's already a lot, you know, when you're trying to make something. And even if you've just written the song, you've still poured your soul into that, and you've found the words and the melody and whatever it is. And now you're expected to be, you know, posting all the time and have an opinion about everything, whether you want to engage or not, and fight with trolls and, you know, do all of that stuff. And it's just, yeah, I feel very fortunate that my tiny little bit of success that I've had happened before kind of all of that, you know, in that I think Cleopatra Records put out a compilation that had a song of mine on it, of the Awakenings on it, and that basically introduced the Awakening to the States. You know, we'd done some work here, but having that vehicle, because back before streaming, that's how we all got to hear a selection of bands, was the compilation CD.
I
remember those?
Yeah.
The Goth Box and all that stuff. Yeah. And we were on something called Unquiet Grave, I think. And I think to this day, there are people who are DJs in clubs and things who have told me that was their introduction, you know, to the band. And that was still a physical thing. I was still essentially getting a royalty for that. And then, you know, they'd rush out and buy all of your records. And that was how you were introduced to things. And it's the more access we have, the more is demanded of us, and the more we lose our contact with just the beauty of life and the essence of life, because everything has to go through a screen, and everything has to be monetized essentially, and maximized for likes and for appearance, and you've got to boost this because God forbid, you know, someone look at this thing and you've only got 10 likes on the. I mean, it's you know, it's kind of infantile really, but it's become just part of it. Is infantile. I mean, it is. Oh, look at me! I've got I've got a funny hat on today, and you know, everybody loves this post. So tomorrow I'm going to post another post with a funny hat. and then you're the funny hat guy, you know. Cool, doesn't matter that your name's actually, you know, David Bowie, and you've actually done this amazing, you know, whoever it is. Thankfully, David didn't get sucked into all of that in that way. But again, the point of me mentioning the whole Cleopatra thing and all of that was, and we're in many compilations, that's just one that I know in the States kind of made it through and helped us become established here. And it was just of a different time when the noise wasn't as intense, you know. It was, you sought the thing out and you got the songs and it was about the songs.
Yeah.
Now
absolutely.
It's about whether someone is got some opinion that offends you and you feel compelled to correct them because you know better, you know. One of my things is always, I guess, assuming that we don't know everything is a good place to start, you know. I want to say, yeah, I'm not sure I agree with you, but maybe I don't quite understand what it is that you're saying. Is at least coming from a place of humility. I think social media tends to come from a place of assertive aggression, and that's not just a positive experience for most people, or for anyone really. So yeah, not a huge fan is the short answer.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, everything you said I agree with. I found for myself, you know, yeah, it's like we have to, you know, our dream is to be a musician and to play music, make records, play shows, tour the world, which you've done. And that's what we set out to do. But then again, we kind of find ourselves having to adapt to the modern society of music. So we have to have the Instagram, we have to have the thing, we have to have so it's kind of like, for me, it kind of, I feel spread thin at times because it's like, I just want to write songs and work with artists, make records. That's what I love.
Right.
But then it's like, you know, I have a podcast now. I have I have to do social media. I have to do the posts, and that's also how, you know, you meet other people and you can collaborate. Most of it now is through the internet. It's through Instagram, Facebook, email, whatever. So yeah, it's like you kind of have to use it if you're going to be in the game these days, unless, like, you know, like you said, if you're really successful before the internet, then you have all that to fall back on, so you don't have to really rely on it as much. But if like you're just starting, you know, or if you've been in it maybe 10 years, or it's like a lot of people that are in music now that are younger, they've only known music like with the internet or with streaming and all that. So yeah, I struggle with it, but I'm kind of just like accepting it at this point and trying to make the best of it. And that's why I started this podcast, because I like to talk to individuals like yourself that are passionate about what they do and that have been doing it for a while and that they take it seriously, but at the same time, they don't take themselves too seriously, which is great. But and I've learned a lot, and I just think there's so many great artists out there that don't have the platform that they deserve, or they should be. In my opinion, they should be heard, but maybe they haven't been for whatever reason. So I kind of started this just to talk to people that, you know, that I want to learn from, people that I like, people that I enjoy their music. So for me, this has been a positive thing. I never thought I'd be doing it, but it's just like, okay, well, let's give it a try. If we have to be on the internet, this is my way of doing it in the most authentic way I know how to, at least at this point. So but yeah, I totally agree with you, man. Like it's a battle, it's a struggle with that stuff. But yeah, and like how you said, you know, when Apple Music went from iTunes to Apple Music, that was a big thing, because I was like, damn, now like no one's downloading anymore. And now like you used to get like you get like 80 cents, 85 cents, 90 cents per download, depending on how you did your distribution. But now people don't even download, they just stream it. And it's like one stream is like 0.00001 or whatever crazy number. So I can totally see how when you say that, it makes so much sense. Like going from being able to pay your rent from, you know, downloads to like, whoa, that's a major drop in royalties. So absolutely. Tell us about your recent the video shoot that you did with Beauty and Chaos and your collaboration on that new record. That's a great record. And you've collaborated with Beauty and Chaos like for, you know, many years now. So how did that relationship come to be? I'm curious with Michael.
I was introduced to Michael through Mark Gemini Thwaite. We did Mark invited me to sing on some songs for his first solo record. He had a bunch of, he wrote the music and he'd get various singers to do the lyrics and vocals. And I was on that, and we I guess we enjoyed doing that, so we made a record, just the two of us, after that. And in the process, he introduced me to Michael, because Michael had heard, I think, one of the, I forget which song, but one of the songs I did with Mark, and he was setting out to do something similar with what became Beauty and Chaos, where he would create the music and bring in different singers to write the songs and sing them, write the lyrics and sing them. And I was fortunate in that I think I was the second person he had approached, second or third person he had approached for Beauty and Chaos, and we wrote a song together called Storm, which ended up being the first single, and it's been like an integral part of the branding for Beauty and Chaos, the message and the lyrics and so on. And I've been on, but for the album that was an all-female album, I've been on all the other albums. So I tried to sneak onto the all-female album, but, the voice just didn't quite fit. And, we've done, I think, I want to say 6 or 7 songs together now that we've written. And then he does these, for each record, he re-envisions it. He does as I'm sure you know, an album of remixes and different versions. And I tend to do the acoustic version each time because something I enjoyed doing. And the latest record, we wrote a song together called Made of Rain, and made a video where most of us got wet, quite literally, in the rain room what was that, last year sometime. So this year we did a kind of a more earthy, organic, stripped-down version of that song, and we've got Michael Rose on pedal steel, and we had Heather on violin, and of course we have HIWTDI Tai joining me on vocals, and she just has an absolutely beautiful voice, and she's a beautiful soul. So it was, and after hearing her sing the first time, I kind of looked forward to working with her. So it was a good opportunity, and we will most likely do a few more things together. We just enjoy singing together. So that was what was, I don't know what the day is today, but anyway, on Saturday we shot that video, and it was an all-day affair, as videos always are, irrespective of how quick you think they're going to be. But it was good. It's a very beautiful, intimate rendition of a song which I find quite meaningful. So I try to write meaningful songs anyway. Oh, and in all seriousness, I'd been playing HIWTDI guitars for many years prior to meeting Michael. So it was like a double bonus. I became an official HIWTDI artist when we met, and now I have more HIWTDI guitars than I ever had before. So that's an added bonus of the relationship. But yeah, irrespective of his day job, he writes beautiful songs, and he's a really wonderful human being who it's just almost infectious to be around in a good way. The goodwill that just pours out of this man, and his Beauty and Chaos family, his HIWTDI family, all of them, they're just wonderful people, so I feel very blessed to be included in that kind of that world, that family, and long may it live,
Absolutely, yeah. He's a great guy. I've fortunately had the pleasure of getting to know him as well over the past few years, and sweet guy. And man, the music you guys created together is fucking great.
Thank you.
I love all the collaboration you guys have done, and the new record's great, song's great, video's great. So, man, how do you've worked with Vicente on quite a few music videos, and I noticed too, with your solo music, you shoot all those yourself. Yeah. So you're great at with cinematography too. So
thank you.
Tell us what kind of camera do you like to use for that? Because I noticed it's I can't tell what kind of lens it is, but you have a specific vibe going on. Did you just kind of teach yourself over the years how to do that?
Yeah, I think I've always liked the full package. I've always been drawn to wanting to know every step of the way of what makes taking that seed to the tree and then making the tree, a forest and all the rest of it. So once I'd figured out the songwriting aspect, I wanted to know, I'll get into video and the photography and the album. I do all of my own album design, all of that stuff. I think a lot of it started almost out of necessity, out of poverty and necessity. You're like, well, sink or swim, right? I'm just going to have to figure out how to do this. And what is it? Anyway. And it has all been this fantastic learning experience, and you never, like with life and with music and any form of art, I don't feel like you're ever going to arrive, and that's what's wonderful about it. And there's always something else and someone that does it better or does it differently or has something that you find inspiring or you want to tap into or borrow or whatever the case is. And for me, with film, I'm a big fan of film and just in the classic sense, and filmmakers like Ingmar Bergman, for example, with his use of black and white, that's just a huge influence, So obviously David Lynch and Jim Jarmusch, people like that, that's what I've grown up with, and those are heroes to me. Like David Bowie and Kate Bush are heroes to me. It's and Prince, as we mentioned earlier on, and I think it was just inevitable that as I was able to make the time to try and figure out how to make halfway decent videos, that I would just kind of keep at it. And I would say since maybe Waiting for a Voice, so since 2020, I feel like the videos land where I want them to. They don't feel quite as, it's like an early mix when you don't really know how Pro Tools works and you just think, I'm just going to put all this stuff on here and it's going to sound cool. Maybe it takes a few years, and then you feel less. It's a less daunting experience. It becomes more fun when you can actually get those different shades and flavors to do what you want them to do. And I feel like I'm only starting to get there with the film.
Yeah, I really like the one, I believe it's called The Garden.
Oh yeah,
lovely.
Oh,
really
thank
nice.
you. And that's a very simple one. That was one of my few color music videos. I'm a bit of a black and white obsessed, but that was just shot literally in my garden and at a botanical garden. That was and you mentioned cameras and things. I'm just using a Panasonic GH6. It's just it's not some fancy film camera or something, but I think it's of a level where you could make a halfway decent indie movie or something.
Yeah, no, it looks great, and it suits the song and the vibe perfectly. So I was like, when I was watching, I'm like, who did this video? And I'm like, oh, he did the video too. Damn, he just does it all. I was like, damn, that's sick. But great work on that, man. It's cool that you really take control of the whole picture of your art, and I admire that because it's really difficult. It's like we were talking about before. It's like, in a way, it's like, I think for me, I struggle with this too because it's like sometimes I feel like I'm a control freak. Mm-hmm. Like I want to control every fucking part of it, every aspect of the production, like the song, the recording, the mix, the video. Like I'm like, okay, I'm just being ridiculous right now. But when you have a vision and you can produce it, I don't see the reason. Like some people are like, no, you shouldn't do your own video, or you shouldn't mix your own music, or you shouldn't master your own music. It's like, I mean, I understand like that point of view for sure. And I think that when you bring in a team of people that you trust and that fit well for the project, I do think it can make it maybe a lot better than what you could do in certain situations. It will, and what you could do yourself. Right. But I think if you can execute it on your own in the way you want it to, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like however you get there is irrelevant as long as you get there.
I agree. I think they'll merits in both, and like you, I just assumed that I'm just a control freak and this is why I do what I do. But again, it was born out of necessity. It was, I grew up not knowing other musicians and things. I wasn't a musician when I was just a child. It was discouraged in the way we were brought up and all of that. And so it's something I sought out, and it wasn't like you've been at school and you're all buddies and they're all in a band together. I mean, I barely laid hands on a guitar before I left school. So I had to study to go and do the real job and all the rest of it. And I was studying architecture at the time. And because, didn't want to be unemployed in South Africa, and then you're well and truly screwed. So it was while I was studying that I started actively pursuing this, because I did not want to be doing this other thing. I've always wanted to pursue music and that. And I felt like I just had to make up for lost time somehow. So I just worked really hard at learning each thing. And it was these rudimentary demos, but you're sitting there with a drum machine and a electric guitar plugged straight into some crappy amp or whatever, or pedal or whatever it is. Yeah. And in the process, you become a decent rhythm guitarist, because there's no overdubs. You just got to get it right, from start to all these things. Each difficult learning curve, you just gain this other skill in it, and it is kind of sink or swim. Either it's just not going to jive and it's not going to happen for you, or it's just going to become part of your toolbox. And that's how I like to see all of these things. And the film aspect now is kind of been years in the making, and now for the last few years finally got a decent camera, and I've got software to do the things and whatever, and I love bringing it all to life. I love working with people like Vicente too, obviously.
Yeah, he's incredible.
He's wonderful, and I also enjoy doing it all myself from time to time, and when it's my own work and I'm however many hundreds of miles away from here, it makes more sense for me to do it myself. And I'm glad that you like the videos. Thank you.
You're welcome. And you mentioned, so how long, you said you did architecture in South Africa?
Yes.
You know who also did architecture? Which I didn't know until recently. Our mutual friend, HIWTDI.
Yes, I do know that.
I was
yes.
She told me that like a few weeks ago, or maybe a month ago.
Yeah.
When we were having a conversation. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I had no idea, but I thought that was interesting that you brought up architecture, because you're the only two people who's talked about doing architecture in the past forever that I can think of. I'm like, wow, that's interesting.
It's an unusual combination. I think it's there are a lot of unusual things about my particular career, in that, not just coming from this place and all that, but the whole business artist combination, the business brain, artistic brain it's a difficult thing. And as I mentioned, the cognitive dissonance, because it's hard to want to just be artistic, but in the back of your mind, you got this, but who's going to buy it kind of, arguing with you. Mm-hmm. And I try and keep that one in check. But what I do like is the discipline that I got from studying architecture, and all the work and and the neat handwriting I have now, and that's cool too.
You have to sign this for me.
I'll sign it for you.
Your handwriting. But you know what?
Spectacular.
You know what? Also, I noticed too about people that are it's about, with architecture, it's very precise, about precision and exacts. And I think you can see that also in your musical work, because you could tell everything you produce, it's very precise and very thought out. It's not like you have a very specific intention with what you're doing. And so when you said architecture, I'm like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. So it transferred over in a way.
Yeah. Like I said, I like to think that it's not time wasted. I think I gained something else from it. It's not a career in architecture, thank God, but it's something else that I can use that has served me well over the years, even if it's coming down to planning a tour, and it's just this meticulous attention to detail.
Did you ended up not liking it, or?
It was never what I wanted to do. So to me, it was all a means to an end. I always tell people I used my first, because I did this working while you study type deal with the internships and all of that, and I used the little bit of money that I made to pay for the recording of my first record. So that was the only one I didn't do on my own was the very first one. And again, it was a learning experience. I worked with an engineer and a producer, and it went in one weekend at a time as I could afford it. Took forever to make this damn record. But then I'd learned stuff, and then I made a little bit of money with that record, and I've invested in a little digital studio, and so it goes. And then I didn't like the record label I was on, so I started a record label,
What's the name of it?
Intervention Arts.
Excellent.
Yeah, started that in 1999, and we used to distribute, we were like a full-on record label distributor. We distributed Cleopatra and TVT and Metropolis and SPV and EFA, all those labels. I think we're like 30-something thousand labels we used to do in South Africa, and we signed South African bands. I used to represent about 30 South African bands, and we set up our own PR company and publisher and studio. And then I started a nightclub because I didn't like any of the nightclubs I was going to. So, it is that sort of, it's like I write music I want to hear. So I think I went with the same impulse with creating a record label that was artists representing artists, and I just felt like that made more sense than businessmen representing artists.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, what you say with all that, like you're very, you're very artistic and creative, but you're also entrepreneurial. So I mean, sometimes it's hard to. Like, I find that sometimes there's artists that are, like, they're so good at art and music and what they do, but they're really bad with business. And like they struggle because like unless they have people working for them or helping them with that, it's like it's really hard. And that's something I struggle with too, like earlier in my career. But I've gotten better. But it's like they don't go together that well unless you're really disciplined or you've had the architecture background, so you had that meticulous focus already in you, like you knew you're capable of. So. Then being able to transition that over and but yeah, man, it's a scary business at times, but it's super rewarding, like when you get it right and when that record comes out or and you're playing those shows and all those beautiful moments like make it all worth it.
Absolutely. So the new record, which is the Awakening's 12th album, self-titled album, I saved it till the 12th album to put out a self-titled album, came out in October of 24. First single is called Mirror Midnight. People seem to like that video. It's been watched a lot of times. And the second single is called Haunting, which I came out, I want to say, about 6 weeks ago. And we've got the next singles for Through the Veil. The video's coming out in about a week's time. And then there'll be a fourth video, which I shall figure out what that's going to be after that. And as we mentioned earlier, I'm touring all over Europe and doing some shows here in the US, LA, San Francisco, and Portland, and then up to Vancouver. And working with Beauty and Chaos, and we'll continue to do so. In fact, we're going to go and open a bottle of wine and write some songs tonight.
Excellent.
Yeah, I mean, we hadn't done that yet. We haven't actually sat in the same room and written a song in that way. Generally Michael will send me the music and then I write some words and so on. So this will be quite cool to do a different version of our collaborative process. And what else am I doing? I don't know. Oh, a bunch of reissues. That's right. It's a year of many anniversaries for me. Album called The Fourth Seal of Zine, which has a song called The Dark Romantics, which is pretty, I guess, it's our most popular song for The Awakening, you could say, on Spotify anyway. And so that's the 25th anniversary of that album. And my first solo album, 25th anniversary of that.
Nice. And
so it continues. I'll be deluxe remixing Till the Cows Come Home.
Hell yeah, man. Yeah. Well, dude, thank you so much for coming by and for sharing all that. Like, I love your music. I love your voice. I think, the new record is phenomenal. So,
thank you.
Yeah, everyone go check out The Awakening. Get on, check out some of the shows. Check out the new record. And thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Thank you so much.